Hey guys, it's Siobhan with Kitty and Beyond. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're doing another installment of the Starseed Origin Series, but this one's going to be a little bit more of an update than a new Starseed type. So I've been working with starseeds for a couple of years now, and I've been using both the Reiki as a form to clairvoyantly see into the soul origin, past lives, galactic or otherwise, as well as the soul realignment modality created and founded by Andrea Hess. I will leave information about the soul realignment modality down below. It's a type of Akashic reading that we use to identify the soul type, soul group of origin, where the soul is currently at, and any karmic blocks and restrictions that are preventing that individual from really empowering themselves and making choices in alignment with who they are and what they need at soul level. So if you're interested in that, you can check the links in the description box below, or you can reach out to me via email. So what I wanted to talk about today was some more updated information. Since I've been working with lots and lots of people and souls from all different places all over the galaxy, I wanted to give an update on some of the new information that's come through regarding some of the different starseed types. So this episode is going to be about Sirian beings from Sirius. So it's not so much about how this presents as a Starseed origin. This is more about the galactic beings themselves. So there's a couple of different types of Sirians is what I've come to understand through clairvoyantly seeing, mostly within Reiki sessions, but we use the soul realignment work to create a foundation to build on in terms of where that person came from, who they are at soul level, etc. So when I'm seeing these types of things, it comes through either in flashes or as like a video reel that I'm watching with my eyes closed. And sometimes I'll even feel into the experience of that being when they're showing me the memory or that file basically in the Akash, because when I'm using Reiki, I'm also tapping into the Akash. So what I've seen is that there's a couple of different races and different planets in Sirius that hold different forms of life. And I touched on this briefly in the original Starseed Origin Sirian video, which I will link above here if possible, or down below in the description box. But what I was shown more recently was that there was a couple of different types of Sirian beings. So the first Sirian beings that I saw are the ones who are very diligent, very organized. They really love to create balance within their environment, and they work together as a cohesive unit to really efficiently improve upon what is already there. So they are all about making improvements and using creativity in a way that is beneficial to the whole. So these types of beings, what I saw from them was that they had sort of greenish, bluish skin, almost like a teal sort of tint, or at least that's what it looked like, given the current atmosphere that they were in. And I did see that they had two suns, so that correlates to Sirius A and Sirius B, which are a binary star system. So their solar system has two suns, which means that there were different light frequencies, and the atmosphere of the planet was different as well. So the air was, how do I explain it? It almost felt like it was a little bit thinner than the air that we have here. They need less, I don't know if they had oxygen or what, but the atmosphere, the way that it refracted the light, it was more of a sort of purplish, bluish tinge, depending on the time of day. So whereas we have the sun that goes through our atmosphere and turns yellow, theirs was more of a bluish, sort of purplish tinge, which could have cast that color onto the skin as well. So these beings, what they looked like to me, they were tall, sort of humanoid types of beings, maybe, 8 to 9 feet tall, so quite large. But definitely not the largest starseed or rather galactic beings that I've encountered. They had bald heads. They had that sort of greenish, bluish skin. They had large eyes, small noses. When you think of, an alien, I don't like that term, but when you think of an alien, that's kind of what they looked like, but a little bit slightly more humanoid. So they had bipedal, so they were up on two legs, they had two arms, but they had very long sort of fingers. they worked together telepathically. So the way that I saw them operating as a unit was that they all were connected energetically as one. They had individuated states of consciousness, but they really worked together as a whole by communicating information telepathically as soon as they would come across it. So I saw them scanning the land, monitoring the oceans, connecting to the different types of beings on that planet. So plant life, animal life, all of the different kinds of organisms that were there. They were basically charged with keeping balance of the land and making sure that everything existed in harmony together. So they really monitored very scientifically, very strategically. Everyone had a different role. They all knew their role. They implemented that role. It was almost like cells in the body that have different things like white blood cells, red blood cells, but they all shared and communicated information telepathically together. And they ultimately were performing these tasks from a very compassionate, heart-centered space. I did see that they rested. They didn't necessarily eat or sleep, but they did have times or periods for rest. And so what they would do is that at the end of this sort of like working day, they would come together and they would go into these little pods that they had. So what I saw was these pods were almost like kind of like crystal shaped, cathedral individually for each being. So they had these sort of like, I would say probably 10 feet tall vertical structures that they would just kind of create as needed and then go into them and then rest. So they would rest in that way, rejuvenating themselves, channeling life force energy. And then the next day they would do the same thing, going about their duties, connecting, integrating, informing, sharing information, helping to balance everything through their energy signatures, through vibration, and then they would go and they would rest at the end of the day. So that was what I saw from that species. Now, there was another one that came through more recently, which is I've been familiarized with the different kinds of aquatic Sirian beings as well. Now, I'm unsure if these are on the same planet or if it's a different planet. It could just be that they're in the water in that one planet, or they could be there and also on another planet as separate beings as well. So what I was shown is that there are whale and cetacean type beings. There are different types of dolphins, possibly even mermaids, although that's more so in Mintaka. But I think that a lot of Mintakans actually came to Sirius after Mintaka was destroyed because there was resonance in the types of forms there. So they were familiar because they had the same type of shape and energy signature. But that's a whole nother thing. So what I was shown recently, I actually worked with a client from Sirius, and we identified that through the Akashic reading, and then we did some Reiki sessions together after that. And what came through in the Reiki sessions in particular was this individual type of being that I had never seen before. And it identified itself as being from Sirius. So this was a Sirian type of being. Now, it had tentacles, so it was a little bit different. It was, from what I could tell, a type of vertically oriented being. So it didn't necessarily live in the water as we would perceive it here on Earth. It was a type of water, but it was almost similar to Mintaka, where the water and the atmosphere are very similar. And so there's not really a differentiating line between what is water and what is air. Although in Mintaka, it was more so a little bit even, you could differentiate between them. It was just that the water seemed more like air, whereas on this Sirian planet, it was almost like everything was water, but it was not the type of dense water that we have here on Earth. It was much more almost gaseous in form, but still a liquid somehow. So these types of beings were aquatic. It was almost like an octopus type of being, although they did have a head. They had, from what I could see, 4 to 5 tentacles, depending on, I think, the gender or the type. Now, there's not necessarily gender with every race or being in the galactic community that I've seen or connected with, but in this case, I think those were the differentiating, the ways that those tentacles were either 4 or 5. I'm assuming that's gender related. But basically, They had sort of lightish blue skin, so a pale blue skin, and then other versions of them had slightly darker blue skin, but it was much more blue in pigment than greenish blue, where the other Sirians were on that other planet. And these beings, the planet seemed a little bit darker, so I don't know if that was just the time of day that I was seeing it at or that I was being shown, or if that was because they're a little bit further away from the suns, but it was a little bit darker in nature, but they still had access to ultraviolet light, so they could see in the ultraviolet light spectrum, and so everything was bright in that sense for them. The energy that they gave out was very heart-based, very heart-centered. It felt like they worked as more so individuals, but they were able to connect as units as well, but less so than the first Sirian species. But this aquatic type of being that I saw there, what was really fascinating to me was that what I was being shown during the Reiki session was that these types of beings had multiple ways of channeling vital force energy, whereas for bipedal beings, or specifically for humans, we have 1 to 2 ways of channeling vital force energy, and it's usually through the top of the head, the bottom of the feet, or through the heart center. What I was shown for these types of beings, these almost octopus or squid types of beings, was that they channeled energy through all of the tentacles. So it was almost like they worked independently. And that's kind of similar to an actual octopus here on this planet, where they have different brains, each controlling the individual limbs. So they have, I think, 8 or 9 brains, 1 in each tentacle, and then an overall one. They have 3 different hearts. So they're built much differently than us, being bipedal mammals. And so these types of cephalopod types of beings, they have this ability to channel vital force energy out through each of the individual limbs. And it's basically like that individual vital force energy, vertical power current is what I would call it for humans, is split, and it's able to function in a more multidimensional way. So basically that's what I was shown, and I found that really interesting. I still don't fully understand what that means or how that's applied, but what I felt from these beings was very, very, very in flow with the environment, very in flow with themselves, the universal energy, vital force, source, consciousness, all of that was embodied to a very high degree. The consciousness was very expanded, is the word that I would like to use for them. And then lastly, I think probably the most interesting species of Sirians that I was shown was actually quite a personal experience for me. This actually came through in a quantum healing hypnosis session that I had for me. It was a service trade with a client and a friend of mine. And so we sometimes trade Akashic readings and Reiki for quantum healing. And in this case, what came through, or what I was shown with, was a past life of mine. And having Sirian origin, this really lined up with that. So this was a new type of Sirian being that I'd never encountered before. And this type of being was very tall, so probably 9 to 10 feet tall. And they had sort of grayish, whitish skin, so very light, pale skin, almost beige, but not quite. And they had very elongated heads. So they had almost like a cone head, but instead of going straight up like the movie cone heads from the 80s, it was back. So it was, the back of the head was just quite elongated and very tall. And they had big, dark black eyes, but they were very soulful, small noses, very little mouth. And they had, again, the long limbs, long fingers, that kind of thing. And they were actually wearing clothing, whereas the other Sirians that were on the planet and doing more of that environmental work were not wearing clothes that I could see. If they were, it was very, very sheer. But these beings, these other Sirian beings, what I was shown was that they had almost like robes or big sort of collared things. If they were on planet, if they were off planet, they were wearing suits, almost like onesies. You know, when you think of like futuristic type of attire, it was kind of like that. And what I was shown was that these were the elder race of Sirians. So I'm, again, unclear which particular planet these ones originate from. I was shown that they were there at the initiation of the Sirian creation. So as Sirius became a habitable planet for souls to incarnate into, they were one of the first beings that were sentient and that were able to integrate souls of a higher sort of consciousness state. They ended up evolving over millennia, so they were there for a really, really long time, and they embodied to a very high degree that source consciousness over the course of this evolution. So they went through various different phases of physical being and evolution, and the end state was this being that I saw with that sort of pale skin, big eyes, conical shaped head. And what they would do is basically they were travelers, they were constructors, they were creators. So what they would do is they would create different states of being. They would also travel and explore a lot. So that's what I was shown from my perspective. And I don't know if it's all of those Sirian elder beings or if it was just me, who tends to be a traveler and a wanderer, as I am. But what I was shown was that when I was that being, what I would do is I would construct a type of device made of consciousness that was like a ship almost, but it was made of my mental manifestation. So I would mentally manifest this ship that would allow me to move through space and time. So what I would do is I would travel all across the universe. I would travel to different dimensions. I would travel to different places and spaces in time and in the universe. I would travel to quantum realms. I would travel to physical realms. I would travel all over the place. And the purpose of this was for exploration and for experience. So me personally, I'm always looking to learn, because that's my primary soul type energy, is to learn through experience, to acquire knowledge, to be able to see into different realms. That's my soul type. And so it makes sense that this form of myself was very interested in exploring and expanding and learning new things. And those races of beings, I was also told, not necessarily shown, but I was told that they were involved in the creation of human consciousness in congruence with the blueprinter type as well, the blueprinter soul group. They kind of collaborated, the Sirians and the blueprinters, with the ancient Egyptian cultures here on Earth. So the Sirians were in part responsible for the construction of the pyramids and some of the esoteric information and knowledge that was gifted to the Egyptians at that time, both through visitation in their galactic being forms, as well as through incarnation. So I also have many lifetimes where I lived as an Egyptian. I studied the death cycles, I studied the gods, I studied rituals, I studied also some harder aspects of lessons and things like that, but those are more personal to me. And so the blueprinter group was more responsible for the Mayans and some of the other human cultures at that time. So they kind of teamed up and kind of divide and assist where they could, and then stepped back and allowed the humans to kind of work with the information in a way that was suited to them. So that's what I was shown from that Sirian race. And it was funny because it came through in this quantum hypnosis healing session. It was very visceral to me. I experienced the state of that being and what I was shown. And the reason why I was shown that for me personally was because it really embodied that wanderer archetype that I resonate with so much. And also it was this air of a very innocent curiosity. It was like everything was new and wonderful. And I really, really enjoyed being able to move through time and space and explore and experience all of these different things. I was also shown that the crown chakra channeled energy in such a way, and that's why the skull and the head were shaped so conically, was actually to channel more efficiently the vital force energy from source coming through the crown chakra and the galactic chakras as well above that. So being able to channel that energy more efficiently made it so that the consciousness within the being, the soul, could express itself in a way that manifested much more efficiently and quickly. So that's why this form of Sirian being was able to manifest a ship and be able to travel through dimensions and time and space and things like that. Whereas in the human form, we are still within the physical. We have to work within the physical. We have to construct ships physically instead of being able to do it with our minds or with our energy. I just wanted to share that information with you guys. Hopefully you find it educational, or at the very least interesting. But those were some information that came through from those different experiences and witnessing these different types of beings. So I wanted to share that with you. And if you guys are interested in learning more about your personal starseed origin, your galactic roots, your connections at soul level, if you're here listening to this series, then chances are very high that you also have a galactic origin. You guys are probably starseeds as well. So if you're curious about learning more of that, you can email me at services.kittyandbeyond@gmail.com. Or you can go on my website, kittyandbeyond.com, and look at my services. I would recommend for this purpose getting the soul realignment reading first, so we can build a foundation and understanding of who you are, how to work with your energy at soul level, and how to clear blocks and restrictions that are impeding you from embodying to a high degree who you are and what you need at soul level. And then Reiki sessions on top of that to really dive deep into the soul's progression, into the soul's origin, into the soul's guidance, or whatever is most needed as you continue to progress through your evolution journey here in this incarnation. So thanks so much for listening, guys, and I will continue this series. There's a couple of different starseed beings that have come through recently. One being that was new to me entirely, so I'll be making a video on that as well. And then another one that there was a couple of different types that were coming through, and I wanted to talk about that as well. So that will be coming up hopefully soon. Thank you so much for your patience, guys, your support. Don't forget to hit the like button and make it do a little happy party dance, and or share this video. Much love, and we'll see you next time. Bye.